My name's Rachel Moore. I'm 29. And last week, my own family erased me like a typo. 1 minute, I was in the family group chat scrolling past Lacy's crystal photos. And my dad's thumbs up replies, and the next minute, I was gone. No fight. No warning. Just removed. Then a single message from my mom hit my phone like a slap. Do not come to Easter. No love. Mom. No love. She actually wrote that dot, and all because I did something unforgivable. According to them, I took every dollar I'd saved and bought a house. Not a charming starter home with subway tile and a porch swing. A $900 disaster. Peeling paint. Windows that refused to close all the way. A roof that looked like it had been holding its breath for decades. The kind of place people drive past and mutter, someone should really do something about that. But it was mine. It wasn't just for crumbling walls, it was a door I could lock knowing nobody had a spare key. It wasn't pretty, but it was freedom. A life that didn't require permission slips. My family wasn't furious because they thought I'd made a bad investment. They were furious because that money wasn't given to my sister. Lacy needed it, according to them, for her healing retreat in Sedona. $15,000 for a spiritual reset breathwork, sound baths, dessert sunrise ceremonies, the whole luxury suffering package. My mom described it like she was funding a mission trip to save the world. So when I showed up to dinner and told them, calmly, like an adult, that I'd used my savings to buy a home instead, the temperature in that dining room dropped so fast it felt physical. My dad looked at me like I'd committed a crime in front of witnesses. Lacy laughed, sharp and dismissive, like the punchline had already been written for her. That is so you, she said dot, and my mom, perfectly composed, set down her wine glass and said, well, you've clearly chosen poverty. That night, I didn't just lose a seat at their table. I lost the last fragile fantasy that I'd ever truly belonged at it. And now here's the part I never saw coming now that I'm sitting on a fold-up chair. In the muddy driveway of the house, they mocked. They're suddenly trying to reach me dot they want back in. And the truth is, I don't know if I want to open the door. It really started at that dinner, one of those meals that looks beautiful on the outside, but tastes like obligation. The roast was overcooked. The wine was too sweet, and nobody was relaxing. It wasn't a family dinner. It was a performance where everyone already knew their lines except me. I remember thinking, if I can just stay quiet, smile, nod, chew slowly, I can survive tonight without setting anything off. But my mother doesn't leave silence alone. She feels it like it's her sacred duty. She started talking about Sedona as if my sister was about to ascend into some higher form. 15,000, she said, casual as breathing. Lacy needs this. After everything she's carried for this family, she deserves to cleanse her energy. Lacy sat there sipping imported sparkling water like enlightenment was already running through her veins. She had perfected her brand, fragile, gifted, perpetually recovering from something unnamed. Always the main character, always shielded. Then my dad turned to me and said, like we were discussing a utility bill, Rachel, you said you'd transferred the funds last week. What's the holdup? My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. I looked up and kept my voice steady. I didn't transfer anything. My mom's eyes narrowed, polite but sharp. Why not? Because I bought something. Lacy froze mid-sip. My dad's jaw tightened like a fist. What did you buy? My mom asked. A house, I said. It needs work. A lot of work. But it's mine. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was hostile. Like the air itself felt offended. My dad spoke first, cold and controlled. So you spent your savings on yourself. Lacy made a sound that was half laugh, half weapon. You bought a literal dump instead of helping me heal. That's so on brand for you, Raj. I set my fork down carefully because I could feel my hands beginning to shake. I never agreed to pay for your retreat. I just didn't argue every time you brought it up. My mom's glass clinked against the table with intention. You've made your choice. Don't expect us to support your delusions. I tried to speak, to explain, to remind them that I'm allowed to build something for myself. But my dad lifted one hand like a judge ending a hearing. You wanted independence, he said. Now you have it. The next morning, I was deleted from every family thread. My name vanished, like I died without the inconvenience of a funeral. And that's when a lesson landed hard. You can be the reliable one, the quiet one, the peacekeeper. You can follow every unspoken rule flawlessly. But the second you stop being useful to their story, they erase your character without hesitation. At first, I told myself it was just shock, a bad reaction. Maybe they'd cool down and realize how unreasonable they'd been. Then the quiet settled in, and with it came memories I usually kept buried. It wasn't just about the house. It had never been about the house. I thought about my 16th birthday. My mom brought out a cake with pink frosting and candles that leaned sideways like they were exhausted. It should have been sweet, except my name was spelled wrong. Rochelle, 2 L's. I'd spent years correcting strangers, teachers, cashiers, substitute nurses. But my own family didn't bother. Or worse, they never noticed. That same year, Lacy got a used Volkswagen. My dad stood in the driveway grinning like he'd handed her the moon wrapped in ribbon. You earned this, he told her. Lacy had a C average and treated school attendance like an optional suggestion. When I asked about driving lessons, I got, maybe next year, delivered like I was requesting a favor I hadn't earned. I remembered Christmas photos where I was always slightly out of frame, half shoulder, half smile like the photographer hadn't realized I belonged there. Cards that said love you girls, but Lacy's name got the extra hearts. The underlining, the attention that felt like warmth. I remembered a Florida trip I didn't go on because there wasn't room in the car. Funny how there was always room for Lacy's oversized suitcase. I did everything right. Straight A's, a statewide essay award, scholarships that covered tuition. I built my mom a website for her nonprofit while drowning in midterms. Because I wanted to be helpful, because helpful was the closest thing I had to lovable in that house. Nobody mentioned it. But when Lacy won Best Hair in high school, they framed the certificate and hung it by the front door like it was a diploma. I spent years believing if I was impressive enough, useful enough, invisible enough, they'd finally see me. But people who benefit from you shrinking don't applaud when you grow. They call you too much. They tell you to relax. They ask why you always have to make everything a big deal. They never had to scream at me or insult me directly. That's what made it so difficult to name. The neglect was quiet, clean, polite. Like being slowly written out of a story with impeccable manners. Once I asked why no one came to my scholarship ceremony. My dad didn't even look guilty. He just shrugged and said, "We've seen you win things before. Let Lacy have her moments." That sentence was basically my childhood compressed into one line. Be strong. Be mature. Don't take up space. Don't need anything. Don't compete with your sister for attention. So I didn't. Until I finally did. The first night in the house was colder than I'd imagined. The air smelled like damp wood and decades of dust. Every floorboard groaned when I stepped on it, like the place wasn't certain it wanted a new owner yet. There were spiderwebs thick in the corners, holes punched through drywall, a radiator that hissed warnings I couldn't interpret. No working stove. No cabinets worth mentioning. Just a box of secondhand tools, a can of paint, and the kind of silence that forces you to hear your own thoughts too clearly. I sat on the kitchen floor with my back against a refrigerator still wearing a faded sticker. From the 90s. I didn't feel proud exactly. I felt exposed, like I'd finally stopped performing. I whispered to the empty room, more confession than statement. Maybe they didn't forget me. Maybe they just never looked. That truth hurt in a way no argument ever had. I pulled out a plastic bin I'd thrown some keepsakes into during the move. At the bottom was an old blue floral curtain from my college apartment. I tried to hang it over the window for privacy, but the rod slipped and clattered to the floor. I, startled, smacked my elbow hard against the wall and sat back down on the cold linoleum. Of course, I muttered, rubbing my arm. Outside, the sky pressed down thick and gray. Inside, something new settled in my chest. Ownership. Not just of the house, of myself. This place didn't care if I was too intense. It didn't demand I fund someone else's dreams before I could build my own. It didn't punish me for choosing myself first. The house was broken, and honestly, so was I. But at least we were both telling the truth about it. I didn't buy that house to make a statement. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because I was tired of earning love like a paycheck. Tired of being good for people who only valued me when I was convenient. 2 days into patching cracked walls and wrestling with rusted locks, my phone buzzed. A voicemail. Mom. No preview. Just her name on the screen, like it still carried authority over me. I stared at it longer than I should have. I didn't expect an apology. I didn't know what I expected. But I pressed play. Rachel, sweetheart. She began, her voice thick and sugary. The one she reserves for bake sales and strangers at church. The voice she almost never used when it was just us. I've been thinking about you so much lately. Things got a little intense. My mom continued in the voicemail, like I'd overreacted to a minor misunderstanding over brunch. But you have to understand, Lacy is under tremendous pressure right now. Of course she was. Planning this retreat has been exhausting for her, Mom went on. You know how sensitive she is. Sensitive. They always said it the same way, like my sister was a porcelain ornament and I was the shelf. Like Lacy could shatter from a harsh word. And my job was to stay sturdy no matter what got stacked on me. I just wish you'd considered how difficult this year has been for her. She continued, and your father was upset. He didn't mean what he said. He was hurt. Then it came. The family anthem. The line I'd been raised on like a bedtime prayer. You've always been the strong one, Rachel. The bigger person. I could have mouthed the words along with her. They'd been saying it since I was old enough to understand blame. Lacy could slam doors, vanish for weeks, say something cruel, and call it honesty. And the whole house would soften around her. She'd return to comfort food and excuses crafted on her behalf. But I was expected to swallow everything translate disrespect into. They're stressed, transform betrayal into they didn't mean it, and call my own pain maturity. The voicemail ended with the same command dressed up as wisdom. We're all doing our best, honey. Maybe it's time to let this go. Just let it go. I stood in my bare kitchen, phone in hand, staring at the stained linoleum like it might offer guidance. The house was quiet, but my pulse thundered. I didn't call back. I didn't text. I didn't explain myself. Instead, I walked to the window and shoved it open as far as the warped frame allowed. Cold evening air rushed in sharp, honest, real, and I breathed like someone who'd finally broken the surface. The next day, another voicemail arrived. I didn't even press play. I knew the pattern by heart. Sweetness first, then the hook. They never reached out to understand me. They reached out to regain access. They didn't miss me. They missed the version of me who kept the peace by disappearing. And for the first time in my life, I let the silence stand, not as punishment, just as a boundary I'd never been permitted to have. A week later, the house knocked back. At first, I thought it was wind rattling a loose shutter. Then it came again, 3 hard knocks, deliberate, impatient. I pulled back the tattered curtain. Lacy stood on my porch like she'd arrived for a photo shoot in the wrong zip code. Cream-colored belted coat, oversized sunglasses, hair that didn't acknowledge humidity as a concept. One heel tapped against the cracked wood like the porch was keeping her waiting. Before I even touched the doorknob, she angled toward a woman walking a dog across the street and said, loud enough for me to hear through the glass, Mom says she's really let herself go. But you know how some people need their little rebellions. My hand stayed on the lock for an extra beat. Then I opened the door slowly. Is that why you're here? To provide commentary for the neighbors? She gave me a smile that could have been printed on a greeting card. Don't be so touchy, rat. I'm just checking on you. You've been, totally off the grid. You mean after you told Mom I was unstable and living in a hoarder house? Her mouth tightened just a flicker of irritation. I didn't say that. You said I wasn't safe to be alone. She looked past me, scanning the interior like she was cataloging damage for report. I was worried. And honestly, look at you. She lifted her chin with manufactured approval. You proved everyone wrong. You're functioning. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a response. That's when her tone shifted. The performance softened into practiced helplessness, like a light dimming on cue. I'm in a situation, she said. There was an issue at the spa wing. A pipe burst. It's a whole disaster. She sighed like a saint accepting suffering. I had to cancel 3 sound baths. She stepped closer, lowering her voice like she was sharing something sacred. I just need somewhere to crash. 1 night, maybe 2. While they fix everything, she glanced into my house again, and the words came out with a shiver of disgust she couldn't fully mask. I can sleep anywhere, even here. Even here, like she was volunteering to survive in a war zone. I held her gaze without flinching. You spent a week convincing everyone I was falling apart. And now you're here because you need somewhere to land. Her shoulders lifted in a shrug designed to look innocent. I was concerned. There was again concern. The word they used to dress up control. Part of me wanted to slam the door. But another part, the part still learning what boundaries felt like, recognized something. This was my house now. My rules. Letting her in for 1 night didn't mean handing over power. It meant testing whether I could hold my ground on my own territory. I stepped back from the doorway. 1 night. That's it? Her face brightened instantly, like a switch flipped. You're amazing, she breathed, already moving past me. I didn't smile. No, I'm predictable. That's what you mean. She swept inside like the house belonged to her by inheritance, heels clicking across floorboards that protested under her weight. I watched her claim space the way she always had, effortlessly, without invitation, without apology. That night she fell asleep on my couch wearing a silk eye mask, her phone playing white noise like she needed the world filtered to be bearable. I stayed awake at the kitchen table with a mug of instant coffee I didn't really want, listening to the radiator hiss and the old house settle round me. The kind of quiet that feels like it's waiting for you to finally say something. True. I opened one of the bins I still hadn't, unpacked, and found a framed photo I'd avoided since the move. My college graduation in the picture. My parents were smiling broadly. Lacy stood front and center, beaming, radiant, holding her phone up to take a selfie, blocking my face completely. You could barely see I existed. A sliver of shoulder, a corner of my cap, technical proof I was present, but not enough to matter. I remembered asking, right after the shutter clicked, can we take another one where you're not covering me? Lacy had laughed like I'd told a joke. Relax. I'll edit you in later. They never retook it. They framed it exactly like that. Hung it in the hallway like a family milestone. And I'd let them? Because somewhere deep down I'd accepted being partially visible was better than not being seen at. I turned the frame over slowly and peeled a sticky note from the pad on the table. I wrote one sentence and pressed it firmly to the back. I am not the background. I stared at those words until my throat loosened because the truth was painfully simple. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life begging people to include me in pictures where they were already angling me out of the frame. I didn't buy this house to win an argument. I bought it because I was done requesting permission to exist. And I was done editing myself smaller to fit inside other people's comfort. The next morning, fog rolled low across the yard like something being gently released. I stood at the back door with coffee in hand, watching the world wake up slowly through dirty glass. The house was still cold, Still crooked in places. Still deeply imperfect. But it didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt honest. Lacy was gone. No goodbye. No gratitude. Just a note scribbled on the back of a glossy spa brochure too. Careless lines of thanks and a half-used bottle of expensive serum abandoned on my bathroom sink like a tip for housekeeping. She didn't ask to stay longer. She didn't ask how I was doing. And for once, I didn't feel rejected by her absence. I felt released. I didn't shut my family out to punish them. I didn't choose this house to prove a dramatic point. I chose it because pretending was slowly killing me, pretending their favoritism wasn't real, pretending their silence didn't wound, pretending I could earn love by making myself easier to overlook. This place cost $900. It smells like mildew when rain comes. It might take me months to make it safe and warm and truly livable, but it doesn't punish me for choosing myself. And that changes everything. If you've ever felt invisible in a room you were told was family, hold onto this. You're not too much. You're not difficult to love. You just deserve a space that doesn't tighten when you walk through the door. And if any of this landed somewhere in your chest, share it. Someone else is living inside that silence right now, and they need to know there's a door on the other side.